By introduction, my name is Michelle Brown. I'm the principal and CEO of Into Action Coaching. We are a New Jersey-based executive coaching and talent management agency, having the honor of partnering with organizations, actually not only here in the United States, but around the world, in helping them create cultures that are led by leaders that are inspirational and motivational. And the whole aspect of diversity, equity, and inclusion has very quickly become a concentrated focus of a lot of the services that we offer. So I'm glad to be here with my partner in crime, Amber Forrester. I know she's currently traveling. Amber, are you able to introduce yourself and sort of meet our guest today? Or would you like me to do that for you?
I'll be very short today. I am just getting into my house. We had a power outage and we were staying at a hotel and stuck in traffic, but I'm Amber Lee Forrester. It's always my pleasure to do these lunch and learns with Michelle. I'll be a little quieter today than usual and just kind of taking a back seat and participating with you all, but I'm the founder of Quartz Wellness Collective and a coach, life coach, business and career coach as well. And I'm sure I'll be chiming in a bit once I get settled into my home again, but it's good to see everyone. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you, Amber.
And hi, Mom.
That's fun.
It's a family affair. It's a family affair. So I'm proud to introduce our special guest today. I'll do a brief intro and then pass the mic on to her. This is Vanessa Phipps, who's the president of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources and also the principal of Future Force Group, which is a leadership development and DEI consulting company. She and I have had the opportunity of facilitating another webinar on the same very subject, and she and I will also be doing a lot of partnering as we continue to support these initiatives within organizations. But before I officially pass the mic on to her, because we're going to be in her very capable hands for our discussion today, the impetus, behind this webinar today is to continue having the conversation, because this is a movement. It's not a moment. Racism continues to be deeply ingrained in our society. And as a result, it's really ingrained in our workplaces too. And one of the things that, provides a call to action for all of us, and hopefully what has been the impetus for you all wanting to join the call today, is because we want to do our part as allies and activists and advocates to really bring about change and transformation, because organizations everywhere are discussing how to uproot this systemic racism from the workplace, but are offering alternatively wondering, where do we start? So, our hope today is that with our collective minds, we can begin to come up with some solutions that we can offer to our organizations and really be a part of the solution and resolve this problem. So with that, I will pass it on to Vanessa, who can introduce herself and to kick us off.
Thank you very, very much, Michelle. And hi, everyone. How are you? Hi, Davina. I get excited when I see the faces and names of people who are outside of New Jersey joining these calls. And so when we last Thursday had our panel event, and there were people who joined from London and Brussels, it was a little bit mind-blowing. And it says to me that this is the kind of conversation that isn't just starting with an end in mind, but will continue. So I love that. I'm not really great at Zoom, but in the chat, if you were on last Thursday's call, can you just quickly give me a yes? Okay. I remember Leslie. Yeah, okay. So I will I will tell you that I absolutely love, Michelle, the way you sort of teed this up, because this is indeed a continuation from those conversations. When I looked at the chat download from that, a lot of what was said was that we didn't talk about how to do this. We talked about some of the challenges that we're having as people of color and as white people who want to be allies and get involved in a movement in their organizations, but how do we do that? And so rather than spending this hour or whatever time we have here today with my talking about how we do that, I want to get all of you involved in some of those conversations. So I'm just going to walk through a couple of slides to get the juices flowing and to share with you some of what I talk about in my sessions with clients who are really, really committed to doing this great work. So I'm going to fumble around for 2 seconds to get my screen visible with all of you, and then we will start. Okay, I did it. Everybody see the screen? Perfect.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. So I wasn't certain if we were just going to kick off with myself. So title slide. And let's see, it's not letting me advance the slides for some reason.
You probably just need to click at the bottom as if, because you've got it in PowerPoint view.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So then I'll look at these two beautiful women and oh, there I am too.
3 beautiful women. Thank you very much.
So this quote, before I talk about that, I will share another quote from the book that I'm just now digging into from Ibram Kendi, How to Be an Anti-Racist. And in that book, he said that at its core, racism is a powerful system that creates false hierarchies of human value. And you see here what Dr. Hardy, who is a sociologist, is saying. The reality being that the group that has the most power and privilege also has the most responsibility to mitigate and to support the eradication of whatever those issues are. It kind of, for me, took me quite honestly to the Bible in Luke, where the quote is something like, or the scripture is something like, unto whom much is given, much is required. And even though there, Luke is talking about wealth and the ability to share those things that are good, the same things apply here. So I think what has resonated with me the most after the murder of Mr. Floyd and the outcry of Black Lives Matter, or the resurgence of Black Lives Matter, and the immediate response, and I welcome that and applaud that from a lot of organizations, is that the focus groups were formed and the town halls happened, but then after that, a lot of companies were not really prepared for what they heard and for what they wanted to do next. And in fact, Camila Mitchell, in our conversation last week, talked about that and talked about the fact that Dow Jones is committed, is working, but a lot of what will happen that will make this a movement will be happening behind the scenes and is going to be very, very slow. So I think, though, that even with that, there are some things that we can talk about that we know need to be in place in order to make some movement forward. And so that the work starts to get done by all of us. The first thing is that we are prepared. that we're not going into these conversations in sort of a hippie, tell me how you feel, tell me what this means for you fashion, but we are really preparing our organizations either through coaching or training or both, so that the employees are having the conversations that don't become more of an attack and defense, or just a time when people sit in the room and are looking at their shoes. The next thing that we need to think about after we've prepared ourselves for the conversation is the encounter. And that really is literally and figuratively setting up the space for us to start talking. The third thing is the engagement, and it's where people enter the space and have these kinds of conversations, but it doesn't end there. The execution happens when we are starting to see transformational change. And that has to happen in a space where we have a recognition of the reality that it's not just about having a knowledge or an awareness or an interest in unconscious bias. And I'm not poo-pooing unconscious bias, and I put this quote there, which actually was shared with me by Dr. Laura Quiros, who was one of the panelists last week. And I share this because this has become, from my impression, kind of the sexy new D&I training. So we get people in the room and they're able to ooh and ah about the brain science that's discussed when we're talking about why we have these biases that, you know, are both affirmative and very negative. But the reality is that if we think about the biases that all of us come with from the age of probably 4 years old, we will never have the opportunity to unpack all of those and to determine how it is that they are impacting the way we think and work and act today. So we need to think about, even before we start engaging with people, the importance of EQ, emotional intelligence, and to understand what that means, that we are able to be very self-reflective about what our triggers are, both as white and non-white people, as women, as LGBTQ plus folks. Anything that we know is going to trigger our emotions, we need to be able to decide how we are going to control those so that we can have a dialogue that is very, very productive. We need to understand what it is to be empathetic so that we are not in our own heads and wrapped up in our own emotions, but also thinking about what your partner across the table from you, who is struggling potentially to have this conversation, is thinking and feeling. And then very, very big in this, that we appreciate the importance of maintaining our relationships and managing those relationships. And finally, even though a lot of EQ content doesn't talk about this, the importance of staying motivated and committed to these kinds of conversations and the work that accompanies them. So let's try to figure out how to tee this slide up. So let's talk a little bit about how EQ can show up when both white people and non-white people are trying to engage in these conversations and step into this space that that requires very, very critical conversations. And so, as I said before, a lot of self-reflection and sometimes some self-control. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about this whole, for our white audience, this whole idea around intent versus impact. And so let's set the scene. So I, as a Black woman, going to get some coffee. I see someone who I've seen in meetings approaching me. She looks at me, and then she looks away, and she passes me. And so I see her possibly in one of our meetings where we are beginning to engage in these conversations around racism. And I say to her, so she says, you know, I really have never thought of myself as a racist, so I don't even know why I'm here. And so I say to her, I passed you a couple of days ago on the breezeway. I was going to get coffee. You were walking back. You looked at me and then you looked down. And I didn't mean that. That was not my intention. And so the conversation shuts down. So as a Black person, I never get to talk about the consequences. I never get to talk about what that felt like for me when someone who I've seen around the office before makes, from my perspective, the obvious decision to make me, quote unquote, invisible. And there's a power that is at play when someone tells you that they didn't mean to do something. So that's something we need to be very mindful of, or that our white allies might want to be mindful of as they think about those impact or intent versus impact kinds of conversations. The second thing that I want to talk about is this notion of, sorry, let's move, I can't see. This notion of equalization of suffering. And what we're really talking about here is when white folks sometimes say, you can't possibly be telling me that I am racist because, you know, our family was so poor, we weren't even able to go to the store and buy some Del Monte corn. If we wanted corn, we had to go out on our little farm and husk it for ourselves. And so, or this notion of empathy of privilege. And what that is so you have someone with whom you're engaged as a person of color, and they're saying to you, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm feeling what you're feeling. In fact, when you mentioned that no one paid attention to you in that meeting yesterday, as a woman, I had that same experience. But if they're a white woman, that was not for them the same experience. So just being mindful of the reality that your reality is not the same as our reality. It kind of harkens back to what James Lewis, one of our, again, panelists from last week, mentioned when someone said to him, why don't we talk about this in bigger terms of bias instead of racism so that the conversation is more comfortable for everyone? This is not a comfortable conversation. It is, however, a necessary one. So let's talk about the experiences of people of color and the absolute necessity of all of us, you, needing to reclaim your voice. We've put ourselves on mute for a long time. And a lot of that, in a lot of instances, is because we are marginalized. And it has become for us sometimes a matter of survival. So as I think about the quote unquote talk that Black parents give to young Black men when they give them the car keys, and the way that we have to shut ourselves down at work sometimes because we need to work and are afraid of losing that work if we speak out in the way that we want to, or sometimes that we are going to be viewed as being aggressive, if that is indeed something that is attributed to us based on our racial identity or ethnic identity. The second thing that is so important for us is to regulate our rage. Rage comes from having had our voices silenced for so long. And I think certainly the pain that comes from that. But now we need to focus on allowing our souls to thrive and understand that because we have not been able to have people understand this pain, that we have had others sort of justify or interpret our experiences through their lens, or we've had people who just did not want to hear us. That is now not the way we will need to grow in order that we are emotionally healthy and stable and are really able to contribute in a fair and responsible way to the conversations that need to ensue. And so with that, I think it's time for us to engage in some table talk. And I just want to say to you, this is not the kind of deep conversation that may come out after you have hopefully had training and opportunities to prepare yourself to engage in the conversations. These, however, are questions that I think it might be fun and interesting for all of us to have an opportunity to talk about it. I'm going to throw them up here now. And they all have numbers, and I am going to defer to either Michelle or Amber to talk about or describe how we can have these conversations with the thought that we will get together in smaller groups, that we will assign a thought leader, someone to sort of get the convo going, and that the poor person who's also going to be taking the notes, or the scribe, is also going to be the spokesperson. So there will be plenty of time for that person to also make certain that they have gathered and synthesized what the entire group wants to share. And in sharing all of this, I will also share it with the understanding that this is a smaller group than we were expecting for I'm sure, a lot of real reasons. So Amber or Michelle, do you want to kind of?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I know Amber has joined us. She's the host. So ladies, I don't think we have any gentlemen in here, but to Vanessa's point, we really wanted to make this much more of an interactive, participatory discussion today. We've got an intimate group, and we hope you guys will play along, so to speak, because when we're in these intimate conversations, it's a lot more impactful when we're able to have you all share collectively what your thoughts are around the solutions of how we kind of get through this and guide even our organizations to the solutions that are so well timed. So we have, oh, Amber's she got kicked out. All right, we're gonna try to do the best we can. We're having some technical difficulties. So the thought is we have 14 people as attendees, and we have 5 questions. Originally, we wanted to be able to have enough of a collection. We would have to have like 3 people per question.
Why don't we pick 3 questions, and we can have 5-ish per group for
okay.
each
All
group.
right. Okay, that's perfect. That'll be perfect. So we need Amber to come back in because we need, trying to figure, Amber, okay, Amber. Amber, can you hear us? Can you speak? She's got herself, I think, muted.
Yeah, we've all here in New Jersey certainly had some serious weather mayhem last night or yesterday. Crazy.
She's the tech savvy person who is going to help us assemble into groups, but I will continue to sort of talk through the instructions. And I'm sure many of you who have been at seminars and workshops have done similar things like this. So the intention is let's take the top 3 questions. You'll be assigned a group, and the premise will be within your group of 3 people each. to initially identify who the spokesperson and scribe will be. That will be one and the same person. And the second of the three parties will be the thought leader. Now, mind you, we're just throwing out those roles with an assembly of three people. I'm sure that this is going to be a lot easier than if we had, 7 or 10 people in each group. But what we want you each group to do is to really, discuss the question, and more importantly, begin to collaborate on what the answer could be from your point of view. Because what we want to be the takeout, each group is going to be given about 10-15 minutes, which may seem like a long time, but we really want these to be robust discussions to come up with, talking points, what the potential solutions or what your group's point of view could be around what the solution or answer to this question could be. And then after about that 10 to 15 minute breakout, to then come back to the General Assembly, because then we want to have the spokesperson from each group share the takeaways and the outcome of that discussion with the general group. And this way we can have more of a robust discussion around each of these three questions and what the viable solutions or actions may be. This is intended for you all to have takeaways to bring back to your organizations or associations, or even with whatever forums you are all participating in. We want to, again, be part of the solution, and we want to provide some fodder for that. So Amber, are you with us?
I am, and before I get kicked off again, I'm going to put us in our breakout groups. I put us down for 10 minutes. You'll get a 60-second warning when it's time to come back to the larger group. All right, so here we go.
And so why don't we do questions 1 through 3? Can we let's just do 3 groups. Can we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
3 groups of, am I overloading you, Amber? Is this?
We have 3 groups. I
Okay.
thought have we gone into them yet? No, we're all still here. Okay. Okay, and so I dropped off for a bit. Does everyone have the questions?
Mm-hmm. They're on the screen. Mm-hmm.
They're on the screen. I'll keep them up there. Can I do that?
Can I make a suggestion?
Please.
Rather than 1 through 3, I would prefer, because I see where the breakout room I'm assigned to is 2. I'm also interested in question 4. So my suggestion would be 1, 3, and 4.
You know what? That question, that was actually for you. Can you believe it? Because we sort of talked about that. Yes. Pam, look at you soothsayer, you. Yes.
Okay. So, okay.
So 1, 3, and 4. Amber, does that enable you to reshuffle?
Well, these are just the questions. So
yeah, but she still has to assign the participants into group 1, group 3, or group 4.
Well, no, so breakout group 1 can take question 1, right? Breakout group 2 would take question 3. Is that what we picked?
Yes.
What did we
1,
pick?
3, and 4. Mm-hmm.
And then breakout room 3 would have question 4.
Okay.
How's that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So does anyone have any questions before you enter into your breakout group? If you want to unmute, or if you want to capture it in the chat, any questions? It would be better if you can unmute yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So are you only going to see, and you'll be interacting on screen with the people in your breakout group?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm still, okay, let's see.
I just got thrown out of my breakout room.
Were you
Yeah, it's
being rowdy?
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. No,
You all hear me?
no, we were just introducing ourselves, and I just got moved.
Yeah.
Yes, so did we.
Oh,
Okay. Hi,
So
everyone.
what
Can you
mode
hear
should we
me?
be in?
It looks like we all did, I guess. Everybody's back in the main.
Yeah, kick out.
Can you all hear me?
Hi. Okay.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hello.
You can? Okay, so
Yes.
hi. I have to assign, my signal's very bad because of the power outage. I have to assign the groups again. I took us out because Vanessa, I don't think everyone heard all of your instructions about which question to take.
okay.
Oh, because we were group
So-
2, so we just took question 2. So if you want to direct which group should get which question, we can do that.
Amber looks like she's frozen again. So, Michelle, you can't take the host to do the breakout. I don't know how to do it myself. Otherwise, I would try to help.
I know. Unfortunately not.
Okay. Yeah, Amber keeps getting bumped off, I think. Okay. Can we have a group discussion?
Yeah, why not?
We
Why
can.
not?
It's not a huge number.
Yeah, let's just do that. Let's
Yeah.
just do that since we're having a bit of technology challenges. Yeah, let's just have, there's enough of us here to still
I
have
think-
an intimate conversation.
It's actually a nice group for an intimate
Mhm.
conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay.
So let's, shall we just want to start with question 1?
Mhm.
Yes.
So what would make it easier for you to have an honest conversation about racism? And let's just add to that at work. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll say I think it's easier for people to have conversations when they feel safety and when they feel that there will be little to no consequence for speaking up and saying things that feel triggering, jarring, racist, cringy. I would say that those would probably be the two things, because work environments are very different from personal environments. And so you do have to toe a line there specifically. And so I think because people have not had really honest conversations about race, nobody really knows what the line is, particularly at work.
What would, at work, what would help you, or what could your organization do that would sort of create that safe space for you? Or are they working on it?
Well, I would think that a well-equipped HR person could probably help guide that. And
Okay.
even having HR bringing in organizations or people like yourself,
Oh, stop
know,
it.
who
Aw.
could help craft those conversations.
Yeah.
And what it might look like.
Can I add a thought? So here's what and this is coming from the lens as an executive coach
Mhm.
and a consultant doing what Vanessa does as well, going into organizations. And what we aim to share with associates so that these quote unquote uncomfortable conversations could be had in a quote unquote easy fashion, if that's, and even that is subjective, is regardless of what permission or support your organization, or I'm even going to call it kind of runway, an organization offers. This is the time, especially whether we're people of color or we are white advocates and allies. This is the time for us to be brave and courageous in having uncomfortable conversations, speaking truth to power in terms of what needs to be said. There may, in fact, be some unhealthy environments, unhealthy cultures, whereby there could be continued sort of subliminal oppression maybe some outright retaliation, but that's where we become accountability partners to say, not here, not now, not today. So,
Hallelujah.
well, it's true. So what I'm saying, and again, I know you're the first person to speak, and I don't want to hog the mic, so to speak, but we oftentimes are never going to be given permission. We may not have the HR allies that say, that's okay. We may be the only one in the room that is comfortable in speaking truth to power, but we have to empower ourselves to be able to say, not here, not now, not today. I'm going to speak boldly and with bravery about what is on my heart, what is on my mind, what I think we as an organization need to do or should be doing, or what I feel is my contribution to this. And again, it's just, again, being inspired and giving ourselves permission to speak our truths. That's my 2 cents.
And this is for anyone. As I think about, Michelle, what you're saying, in those companies where there was not even a rustle or a whisper in response to what has happened in this country, is there a more personal way to connect, to show an allegiance and a support? And if so, how could that happen?
Is
So
that a
that
question you're posing to the group?
yeah, so it's not just it is not just always such a big statement and a large movement. I think we all have to consider not just where we are, but how we are. You know, how we respond to stress, our ability to speak loudly, and if we don't have that, then how can we speak more softly to show that we care and that we are allies, that we do want to engage. I, as a Black woman, want to engage with someone who's white in my company and let them know that I'd like them to think about something in a different way, to work with me in a different way, and just call their attention to something that they have done that has made me uncomfortable. It's like, how can that happen? Or how has that happened, if it has with anyone? As we used to say in college, I just want to pull your coat. So how is it that we pull the coat of someone to let them know that we want to have this uncomfortable or critical conversation or chat with them?
I think it also opens the door to changing, the way I kind of see it is changing the template. And what I mean by that is we've always been taught you do not speak about politics, race, and religion on the job. So what's happening now is a huge shift, not only in the country, but in the employment culture of suddenly telling people, you know what, it's okay to have these discussions. But I also feel that with the process of it suddenly being okay to have these discussions, now we have to find out how. My thing is it opens the door to creating friendships, because the same way that you have to speak to, say, a family member, you know, you don't want to yell at your family, but I think it's possible to say, hey, would you like to have a cup of coffee during a break time? And casually speak to them about something that is on their mind in a way that's not attacking them, in a way that's empathetic, and everything that you want from them, you project that to them so that they can try to project it back to you. But it first has to start with the mentality that it's okay to have this discussion, which is a huge, huge process.
It's amazing that we're in workspaces for a longer time than we are with our friends or with our family. And it's just, it feels so counterintuitive to have these very particular walls. I mean, I do believe that people have to have boundaries, but it's so counterintuitive to the way that and I attribute this greatly to capitalism, which I think is attached to patriarchy, which is attached to white supremacy, which is attached to why we're all having this conversation. I think that there are some things that are just sort of diametrically opposed to our spirit and the way that we function as human beings, that where we get forced into these workspaces to be in them for 10 and 12 and 15 hours, a week, and then we go home to our loved ones and we have nothing. We're depleted. We have nothing. And so we're supposed to have those intimate relationships with people which we are now depleted, but we have to show up and be 100% in our workspaces in places that don't even feel emotionally rich or safe. It's really, I don't know the answer to it, but it just feels so counterintuitive and counterproductive as to the spirits of human beings and the way that we function.
You're absolutely right, Desi.
So agree.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Pam, was there something you wanted to
I
add?
just said I so agree with Desi that you know, especially as an HR professional, pouring 100+% into the work for 40, 50 hours a week, but not necessarily feeling the close connections that you might encounter in a more diverse workplace setting. And so I just personally find the partition between my personal life and my work life. Yet my work life is so predominant of my life, but there's still a partition there. And so getting over, beyond, or through that partition, I don't necessarily have the answers, but just kind of circling back to the first question, what would make it easier to have that honest conversation? I go back to the discussion at last week's meeting where you talked about providing a book list. And in fact, I shared that suggestion. There's a couple people, 4 people, I think, from my organization on this call. And I shared the idea of a book list as a suggestion, as a conversation starter. Books, articles, something maybe starting with the objective and then sort of finding a way into the more subjective aspects of the conversation.
I love that idea.
Yeah. There's something I want to add, and I certainly want to hear from everyone because the time flies by so quickly. But there's 2 points I want to make. One is because of the robust nature of our dialogue, and I neglected to make reference to it at the beginning, is we, with your permission, would love to extend this an additional 15 minutes. Normally we end at 1:30, it's 1:18, and we've basically are just touching on one of these questions. So, we'd like to invite, for those who can afford the time, to go to 1:45 to give us more time, and we'll kind of pick up the pace. So if you've got to drop off because you've got other obligations, by all means, we understand. But for those, who can stay on, we would love that. And that's the first thing. And then I'll make my second comment pretty quickly. I know Pam said she doesn't have the answer, and Desi raised a really, really good point. And I'm telling you, ladies, my heart is pumping, because what I want to say is this is the time we have to change the paradigm, that we are no longer compartmentalizing our lives. Work is what we do, but this is our life, okay? So what I believe has happened, and I spent 25 years in corporate before I spent, the last 15 years as an executive coach and talent management consultant. And with those, 40 plus years, what I've been able to uncover and what literal gift in conversation I offer to people that I partner with, as well as friends and family, is this is not the time for us to keep the paradigm that we cannot speak sort of a truth about what our feelings are, because whether it's politics, whether it's religion, I think the reason why those walls have been put in place is because we've not been taught or nurtured or have allowed ourselves to do it in a tactful and diplomatic way. I think that's where the walls have gone up, because, you know, whenever conversations have been brought up and they're somewhat combative or argumentative, it's because somehow the way that two people or a group of more than two, they have not been able to sort of express their point of view, their ideas, or ask a question in a tactful, gracious, and diplomatic way. As we find the words, and Vanessa spoke to it very clearly, when we are leveraging emotional intelligence and empathy to come and drop to our hearts to say what needs to be said, but not in a polarizing way, then we are offering an opportunity for that other person to respond. And hopefully, if they're anywhere resembling healthy, can hear it and receive it. So I believe that giving ourselves the ability to kind of speak to, you know, what I heard you say bothered me. Start with the I, number one. Number two, make sure that the way we're crafting up what it is that we want to say is not taken in enough, not presented. I can't speak to how it may be taken, but not presented in a defensive way. It's an offense when we come from the I. So that's just my 2 cents. I feel so passionate that these are conversations that are timely to have even in a workplace, because we are people and we're humans and we can't compartmentalize our life. At least we should not continue to. But when we learn how to serve up a conversation with the right tact and diplomacy, there's no place we can't go.
Mm-hmm.
A conversation, not a confrontation. I just was thinking that. If we present things as a conversation and not a confrontation, I think that's probably the start. And
well,
then
but hang on, I'm going to challenge you. Confrontation, by Webster's definition, is purely the ability to confront. What we as a society, we have put an additional definition on confrontation to mean conflict, argument, breakdowns. Confrontation is a good thing. When I see something that someone is doing, that I need to confront it, but it's how I confront it. So we don't necessarily want conflict, but we definitely want confrontation. I want to be able to have us confront a situation that may be the, you know, pink elephant in the room, but how we confront a situation with tact, diplomacy, taking into account what we say and how it may land graciously on someone's ears, that's an okay thing to do. So we even want to think about how we use.
So like reframe confrontation leading to conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
No, I thank you for, that's beautiful, Michelle. And Desi for immediately absorbing that and having it make sense. Love it.
Absolutely, Desi. Absolutely.
Yes.
You always bring up great points on our Wednesday calls.
Yes, she is. I want, yeah.
She does.
Thank you, my ladies.
Love
Yes,
her.
you do. Yeah.
So, do we want to move to another question or? Okay.
We need to. Mm-hmm.
Vanessa, I have one thing to add, and
Please.
my name's Tom Telford. I work in
good.
Pam's organization, and thank you for the conversation, and thank you for your slides earlier. I like them a lot. Though regarding question 1, what would make it easier?
Mm-hmm.
I think starting from a place where we are just remembering that what science or DNA tells us that we're, and you've heard this before, 99.7 or 99.9% the same. So when we start from a place of commonality, we probably agree on more than what we disagree. And Michelle Obama says it's hard to hate up close. So once you learn to know somebody else, maybe on a different level, regardless of the color of their skin or their background, it just helps to see, oh, you know, we have something in common. That tends to be a good starting point. And then from there, you know, maybe once there's understanding and some
Trust.
Trust, that's a good word. Then some of the other questions can come more naturally. And then also to offer some grace and forgiveness if you misspeak or use a term that maybe is offensive to somebody else, but you don't intend it to be offensive, but it is, and to have that person be able to say, gosh, I really wish that you wouldn't use that term or use this language. Maybe you could use something else, but having the ability to offer that suggestion.
That's huge. That's huge. Yes, absolutely. The ability to forgive empathetically. Absolutely.
If I could just
Thank you.
ask a follow-up question. Hi, my name is Molly Rose, and I'm actually from a private school. We instruct children who are on the autism spectrum, and we're trying to, Stephanie Trusty, my colleague, and I, we're establishing a diversity and inclusion committee. So this webinar was recommended to us just to kind of get the juices flowing, get some ideas flowing on how to really get that committee going. And just a follow-up question that I had was, what are your recommendations when there are a couple of, I guess, disadvantages working against you? For instance, like not only I'm Hispanic, not only am I a Hispanic woman, but like in that statement alone, I am a Hispanic woman who also, I'm younger than a lot of the other staff there. And I find that, given my age, it becomes a lot difficult to kind of start these conversations with my colleagues who are older than me and might not be as willing to want to listen or engage. So I was just kind of wondering if anybody had any feedback or recommendation on how to start that when you feel you have a lot of power actually working against you.
I would jump in and first say that these are not, the things that you mentioned are not, sort of things against you. We're talking about intersectionality. And so always see those things as power. Being a woman of Latino descent, being a woman, knowing that there is inherent power in those things, and just understanding that as being intersectional. And so if I had to think of my own situation, I think of myself as Black and woman and thick and dark and all of those things. Society will tend to present challenges, but I find inherent strength, in all of those things. And so I think what you could do, and this is just my, my suggestion, other people might have others, is I think the gentleman spoke, his name was Tom.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I have to admit, when Tom was talking, I'm like, he sounds like a white person who's trying to innately put comfort in here. And this is not comfortable. So, but I hear where he's coming from. And I think speaking from commonalities definitely foster, further discussion. That commonality honored in some way. And so maybe deferring to their age and saying, this is the way I understand race, and this is the way I understand gender, and this is the way I understand. So, could you offer some level of understanding, based on your generation? And you can have this conversation in a way that doesn't offend them, as if you're saying they're these old biddies that, tell me about the times of, colonial days. Like, you know better how to broach that conversation, but maybe that is the conversation. Like, can we have maybe an intergenerational conversation about the way that things are changing? Rather than trying to skirt around it, maybe make that the conversation.
Right. That's great. And knowing your objective. Why do you want to have the conversation?
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
And Molly Rose, if you're interested, I can share some support for you because you are working in a school on some things that are diversity and race specific for people who work in schools.
Yes, that would be very helpful.
Okay. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. So Vanessa, I think for time's sake, we need to progress to the next question.
Yeah. So I that's what I'm thinking about. So I'm gonna, I'm gonna go with one. I don't know if we even picked this one, but I was curious about it when I wrote it. How have you seen assumptions about you as a blank play out in the workplace? And this is something I think everyone can respond to. As you think about whatever diversity dimension comes to mind when you hear this question, how have you seen them play out in the workplace? Whether you're a white man, a Black woman, a thick woman, love that. You know,
Two
whatever,
C's.
however that question strikes you, how has it impacted the way it feels to be where you are at work?
Well, I'll jump in. I think that it could go either way, but sometimes it, you know, if you are the only of whatever it is, and in my particular instance, in my last workspace, I was the only Black person. You know, there have been some instances where I had to, you know, where I had to check people that I don't know if it was about race, but that is the thing. When you're the only person and you are constantly navigating race, you don't always know what is happening exactly. And so I did have an instance with two white women. One of them, we were all working remotely, and one of them, you know, reached out to me, and we hadn't ever met in person. We had only done digital and video conferencing. And so she was coming in from out of the country. She was going to be here for a few days. And she asked me if I wanted to meet in person and have lunch. And I said, oh, that sounds nice. And because she's more senior, a week or so later, I got a whole email about numbers and deadlines, and you know, and then I found out there were going to be two people. And I said, well, wait a minute, you told me you wanted to have lunch, and now this is like an evaluation. And so if that was really what you wanted to do, then I think you should have been forthcoming and said that. And then it was like, oh, no, I didn't, you know. I said, then why did you broach it with lunch? That feels like an ambush to me when you start with lunch, and then all of a sudden it's the two of you wanting to evaluate me. And so it could have been nothing, but in those situations, when you're the only, you know, whether it's you're the only woman or the only Black person or the only dark-skinned person or the only person that presents as Blackness in a very particular way, you know, you're, I don't want to say you're paranoid, but you are on alert. I find that I'm on alert. And so it's either that or I have to be the expert on all things Black. Mm-hmm. And I'm certainly not.
Mm-hmm. What about Stephanie? If when I'm in class, I call on people. Stephanie?
Are you calling for me, Stephanie Cole?
Yes.
Yay! Okay. I just shoved some spaghetti in my mouth, and timing is everything. I knew I was going to get busted. All right. I knew it.
I love it. Pass me that.
Chew and swallow quickly. Thank you, but thank you. I'm loving this conversation. You can probably tell I'm rather outgoing, but I'm also very strong. And when the strength comes out, it tends to throw people back, because they're like, wait a minute, where is happy Stephanie? And I'm like, well, now's not the time to be happy. Now's the time to get some things done. And when that part of me comes out, people, I can see the calculation starting, like, well, how long have you always been like this? Who are you now? Wait a minute, is there a time clock on? Is this going to run out? You know, tick tock, boom. What's happening? And I will wrap this up by saying someone a long time ago, and it hit me this year in 2020. And this was roughly 12 years ago. I was at a conference, and I was setting up booths and setting up materials and setting up everything. And I'm one of those people that's very independent. You tell me what needs to be done, I'll go and do it. If I need help, I'll let you know. And I was rushing around the conference center doing everything. And there was a group of women, white women, young white women that, you know, were my associates. An Asian man came up to me, and it threw me back, and he said, Stephanie, everyone needs to carry their weight in this. I've been watching you set up this entire booth. There are other people that can help, and they're not reaching out to help. wait for it. He said, I don't want you to be the mule, M-U-L-E, of this conference setup. And because I was much younger, I was offended because my first reaction was, I can't do this by myself. I mean, I'm capable of setting up this entire setup. He said, that's not the point. The point is you are capable. That is true. The point is you should not have to. And your default reaction should not be that this is what I do. Being a much younger person at that time, I could not get what he was saying to me because all I could hear was him telling me I wasn't qualified to do a thing. But what he was telling me in his own way was, Stephanie, do not fall into the trope of the one who automatically defaults to doing the heavy lifting. As I had many other assignments in my professional career, I always think of the lesson that was taught so many years ago. And during the pandemic of 2020, it crystallized like, that's what he was trying to tell me. So I just want to shout out to that wonderful person for getting through to such a young professional all those years. I get it now. I get it. That's my contribution to the webinar today. Thank you for coming. I'm going back to the spaghetti.
I immediately heard Zora Neale Hurston with the mule reference and how Black women have just been the mule historically through our passage here on these lands, these native lands that were stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to be the timekeeper. We need to progress, and I would love for us to kind of move to question 4. I know Pam has asked for that to be addressed, but one thing I just want to make, because I just don't know how to muzzle myself properly. I love the way question number 2 was phrased. How have you seen assumptions, right? The word assumption, presumptions, first off, we need to recognize other people's opinion of us is really none of our business. Assumptions and presumptions are projections. So, in order for us to find who we are and communicate that, so this oppression, regardless of whether we are gay or African American or women or LGBTQ, whatever label or definition someone else has about that diverse group does not necessarily, we don't have to own it, and therefore truth does not need to be defended. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that.
All right, question 4. Vanessa?
So I've been thinking about this and Pam, and not just the fact that she is probably one of the few, I'm presuming, people, certainly Black people at our company, and that she's in HR, which has its own kind of.
Two of them, the two of us are on this call.
Okay.
2 of 3.
2 or 3. So then, and then the fact that an HR has its own sort of challenges, people, and the assumptions that people have about people in HR and their allegiance, not to the people, but to the company. And as I think about those spaces where I have not been in the majority, of which there have been many, I will be very candid with you. I have no issue with forming an affinity with people who look like me. I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it sometimes becomes troublesome for people who are looking at that and making their own assumptions about it. But to Michelle's point, I care not. There is always, I think, a necessity for us who spend 8, 10, 12 hours in a place to find someone with whom we are comfortable and can form that kind of an allegiance. And to also begin to ask the questions that are less comfortable of other folks? What is it that you think that we as a small organization, a large organization, can do to support equity? That's not a contentious question. That's not a question that should make anybody cut and run. It's a question that says there are opportunities for us to grow. And so let's start talking about those opportunities.
I've got to pose a question to Pam. I'm going to put you on the spot since you were so passionate about this question. So if you knew you could not fail, how would you go about speaking to senior leaders within your organization about supporting equity?
I don't think it's a matter of knowing I couldn't fail. It's more a matter of feeling, I don't want to use the word permission, but for lack of a better word at this point, it's the discernment of my responsibility to the organization as it is, the employees, the managers, the leaders within the organization, to be that, to provide that guidance and support for both the employees, the managers, everyone. But I've always felt that my personal agenda should take a back seat to that, and somehow recognizing the need for, you know, equity and inclusion and all of that, understanding that personally, still feeling that I have a greater responsibility to the organization to provide that direction, support as it is, as opposed to what I think, as opposed to trying to influence it from my personal perspective as a Black woman. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it does, but I'm just going to cut to the chase. So even with your role, you want to be an upstander within your role within an organization. How would you do? You're still a Black woman, so there's no other lens you can see things through, but yet being altruistic, it's how can you come at it from the perspective of, this is my role as an HR business partner.
Exactly.
And our organization has a certain amount of values, and whether equity is in it or not, it's empowering. What I'm looking to aim to support you is what could you be doing, given your role, that speaks truth to power about what your organization should and could be doing around equity, and not looking for permission.
I get that. I'm just being very real about the 22 years that I've been with this organization. So we are at a point now where this, as part of the sort of, you know, what's going on in the greater society, as well as, I just think that the organization has come to a point where it recognizes diversity as a value, inclusion and equity as a value. So that initiative has started. We're just starting to really identify that as a value that needs to be further promoted within the workforce. And I think that there needs to be a process of engagement with our employees to identify that as truly as a value. Because frankly, one of my concerns has been, is this organization welcoming as it relates to the concept of diversity? And what is my role in creating that climate of welcoming, speaking to power, as you very appropriately put it?
I think that this is now your time to claim your power, quite honestly, in the way that you described it, and just getting comfortable with how it makes sense for you to do that based on the culture in that organization. And so that's probably not a question that can be answered right here, right now, without knowing more about the culture.
Sure.
But this is your time. whether they like it or know it or not. This is your Xena warrior princess time in that company. So I would love for us to talk about that more offline, so that you can utilize your power in a way that it's received in the way that you want it to be.
So I have to be mindful. We're here at 1:45. So do you want to, Vanessa, you want to wrap it up as best you can with what has been shared?
So I am
Vanessa's deep
absolutely-
sighs.
I am such a processor. I really am. So I love what's been shared. I love the vulnerability that we've had because this group has been smaller. I love the sort of the diversity of where all of us are in our path, and the just sort of the fervor that we continue to have around being in a better place. And so
can I also offer? I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm
No,
very
please.
sensitive to time and people got to get back.
Okay.
So we've got a small group, and I can only speak for myself, and you know, if Amber or Vanessa want to chime in here, I'm going to offer up something with any of these 3 questions. Any of these 5 questions, as you all continue to sort of take away and ponder the answers to these questions, I invite any of you to reach out to me via email so we can set up a call. I'd be more than happy to support any of you in providing some guidance around how to master the answers to these questions and empower you to come up with the solutions that fit you and may be appropriate for your organization. We've had incredibly robust conversations, but our goal was to have you guys kind of walk away, and maybe many of you have, with, okay, I have the answer, I have solutions, and now I'm going to look to implement and put it into place. But if any of you, there's still an element of ambiguity, I'm going to offer up my time because this is what, you know, is important to me. I'm incredibly passionate about it, and I want to support anyone who may not have a clear runway or pathway to what their answers could be to this, to bring about change and transformation within their organization.
That's excellent. And I offer up the same. Absolutely. Very cool.
Okay. So, ladies and gent, we were so grateful to have you as part of this conversation today. Thank you for taking these hour and 15 minutes to be a part of this change that we want to see happen. As Mahatma Gandhi would say, we want to be the change we want to see in the world. So thank you all. Stay tuned. We will be back again on September, I think it's the 5th, the first Wednesday. We will have 2 subject matter experts speaking to establishing trust and estates. So be on the lookout for that invitation, but we enjoy the rest of this month, the rest of your summer, and we will see you the first Wednesday of the month.
Hear, hear.
Always
Thank
wonderful, beautiful space. Always wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank all of you.
Thank you.
Yes, our pleasure. And thank you for coming. Take care.